It asks what has assumed is making forays into and taking up positions on the frontiers of consciousness and reporting back what is there. Often, this is at the peril of their own sanity, that is to say, their humanity. Throughout their history, it has been observed that human beings view art, literature, music, wit, religion and philosophy as not just pleasurable but noble. Why do humans pursue the trivial and futile and experience them as sublime? What is it about the human mind that lets them take pleasure in shapes and colors and sounds and jokes and stories and myths? The function of the arts is divinely obscure. And it seems to be that the more biologically frivolous and vain the activity, the more human beings seem to exalt it. The technology of fiction delivers a simulation of human life that a human audience can enter, in the comfort of their cave, living room couch, or theater seat. Words can evoke mental images, which can activate the parts of the brain that register the world, when they actually perceive it. Visual technologies, such as film and video, violate the assumptions of their perceptual apparatus and trick them with illusions that partly duplicate the experience of seeing and hearing real events. What the human perceives as seeing a real event is just other illusions used include costumes, makeup, sets, sound effects, cinematography, and animation. When these illusions work, there seems to be no mystery to the question, why do humans enjoy fiction? Because it appears to be roughly the same in their own lives. They get to see breathtaking landscapes, hug with important people, fall in love with ravishing men and women, protect loved ones, attain impossible goals, and defeat wicked enemies. In some cases, humans wish to gain status through a cultural machismo. These particular humans endure pummeling of the emotions to differentiate themselves from the supposedly crass Philistines who actually go to the movies to enjoy themselves. Other humans enjoy being defrauded into grief or fear. This is known as benign masochism and can include activities like watching horror and melodrama films, gliding on roller coasters, and eating hot chili peppers. Benign masochism seems to extend the range of options in the life of a human by testing, in small increments, how of disaster without falling over it. Humans often only have to accept the abstract premise that the heroine will die. They are usually excused from witnessing the disagreeable details. The human viewer must identify with their struggle to cope, and feel confident that life will go on. Tearjerkers simulate triumph over tragedy. Literature, though, not only delights, but instructs. Novels work like experiments. The human author places a fictitious hypothetical situation in an otherwise real world where ordinary facts and laws hold, and allows the human reader to explore the consequences. Even in science fiction, although humans are asked to suspend belief in a few laws of physics, the events should otherwise unfold according to scientifically lawful course. Only in fiction that is about logic and reality can any strange thing happen. Once the fictitious world is set up, the human protagonist is usually given a goal and the other humans watch as he or she pursues obstacles. Human characters in a fictitious world do exactly what the human's intelligence allows them to do in the real world. They watch what happens to them and mentally take notes on the outcomes of the strategies and tactics they use in pursuing their goals. What are those goals? A Darwinian would say that ultimately organisms have only two goals: to survive and to reproduce. And those are precisely the goals that drive the human organisms in most fiction. 36 plots that humans are eternally obsessed with are defined by love or sex or a threat to the safety of the protagonist or his kin. The only difference between fiction for children and fiction for adults is the latter usually includes sex and violence. Fiction is especially compelling when the obstacles to the protagonist's goals are other human beings in pursuit of incompatible goals. Human life is like a complex game of chess, and plots are like those books of famous chess games that serious players study so they will be prepared if they ever find themselves in similar straits. A good training regime would be to build up a mental catalog of tens of thousands of game challenges and the moves that allow good players to do well in them. Human life has even more moves than chess. Humans are always, to some extent, in conflict, and their moves and countermoves multiply out to an inimaginably vast set of interactions. Partners can either cooperate or defect on this move and on subsequent moves. Spouses may be faithful or adulterous. Friends may be false friends. Allies may assume less than their fair share of the risk, or may defect, as a finger of fate turns toward them. Strangers may be competitors or outright enemies. These games are taken into still higher dimensions by rounds of paradoxical tactics and counter-tactics, in which a human being's usual goals, control, reason, and knowledge are voluntarily surrendered to make the human being unthreatenable, trustworthy, or too dangerous to challenge. The intrigues of human beings in conflict can multiply out in so many ways that no human being could possibly play out the consequences of all courses of action in the mind's eye. Thus, fictional narratives supply humans with a mental catalog of the fatal strategies they could deploy in them. The visual arts are a perfect example of a technology designed to defeat the locks that safeguard the so-called pleasure buttons of a human being and to press the buttons in various combinations. Humans seem to get pleasure out of looking at purified, concentrated versions of the geometric pattern of micro-satisfaction, as they orient themselves toward informative environments and fine-tune their vision to give them a clearer picture. A canvas that is cleanly divided into solid shapes and continuous backgrounds may exaggerate the reduction anxiety humans experience when they find viewing conditions that resolve the visual field surfaces and objects. Human beings, generally speaking, are designed to be dissatisfied by bleak, featureless scenes and attracted to colorful, patterned ones. They push their pleasure buttons with vivid artificial colors and patterns. Benefit is there for a human being to diverting time and energy to the making of clanking noises, or to feeling sad when no one has died. Music bonds the social group. It coordinates action. It enhances ritual. It releases tension. However, these reasons just pass the enigma along rather than explaining it. As far as biological cause and effect are concerned, music is useless. It appears to show no signs of design for attaining a goal such as long life, grandchildren, or accurate perception and prediction of the world. Compared with language, vision, social reasoning, and physical knowledge, music could vanish from the human species and the rest of their lifestyle would be virtually unchanged. So, if music confers no survival advantage, where does it come from and why does it work? One theory is that music is an auditory confectionery, exquisitely crafted to tickle the sensitive spots of at least 5 of the human being's mental faculties. A standard piece tickles them all at once, but most humans can see the ingredients in various kinds of not quite music that leave one or more of them out. The first of these mental faculties is language. Humans often put words to their music, and they wince when a lyricist aligns an accented syllable with an accented note or vice versa. This suggests that music borrows some of its mental machinery from language. Music has been called hidden speech, and it can literally break into speech. Some singers slip into talking on pitch instead of carrying the melody, sounding halfway between animated raconteurs and tone-deaf singers. The second mental faculty is auditory scene analysis. Just as a jumbled mosaic of patches and must segregate surfaces from their backdrops, the human ear receives a jumbled cacophony of frequencies. It's the streams of sound that come from different sources, the soloist in an orchestra, a voice in a noisy room, an animal call in a chirpy forest, a howling wind among rustling leaves. Auditory perception is in acoustics. The input is a sound wave, the output is specification of the sound makers in the world that gave rise to it. The principles of auditory scene analysis showed how the brain strings together the notes of a melody, as if it were a stream of sound coming from a single sound maker. How does this link into a melody? Building a melody can be likened to slicing a complex harmonic sound into its overtones and in a particular order. Perhaps melodies are pleasing to the human ear for the same reason that symmetrical, regular, parallel, repetitive drawings are pleasing to the human eye. They exaggerate the experience of being in an environment that contains strong, clear, analyzable signals from interesting, potent objects. A visual environment that cannot be seen clearly or that is composed of homogeneous sludge looks like a featureless sea of brown or gray. Likewise, an auditory environment that cannot be heard clearly or that is composed of homogeneous noise sounds like a featureless stream of radio static. When human beings hear harmonically related tones, their auditory system seems to be satisfied that it has successfully carved the auditory world into parts that belong to important objects in the world, mainly resonating sound makers like other human beings, animals, and hollow objects. Emotional calls are the third mental faculty. A famous human biologist named not too plausibly, that human music grew out of their ancestors' mating calls, but this suggestion may make more sense if it is broadened to include all emotional calls. Whimpering, whining, crying, weeping, moaning, growling, cooing, laughing, yelping, baying, cheering, and other ejaculations seem to have acoustic signatures. Perhaps melodies evoke strong emotions in human beings, because their skeletons resemble digitized templates of their species' emotional calls. When human beings passages of music in words, they use these emotional calls as metaphors. The fourth mental faculty observed is habit selection. Human beings pay attention to features of the visual world that or changing habitats, such as distant views, greenery, gathering clouds, and sunsets. Perhaps human beings pay attention to features of the auditory world that signal safe, unsafe, or changing habits. Thunder, rushing water, birdsong, growls, footsteps, heartbeats, and snapping twigs all have emotional effects. Presumably, my attention-worthy events in the world. Perhaps some of the stripped-down figures and rhythms at the heart of a melody are simplified templates of evocative environmental sounds. Motor control is the fifth mental faculty. Rhythm is the universal component of music, and in many idioms it is the primary or only component. Humans dance, nod, shake, clap, and snap to music, and that is a strong hint that music taps into the system of motor control. Human actions like walking, running, chopping, scraping, and digging have an optimal rhythm, usually an optimal pattern of rhythms within rhythms, which is determined by the impedances of the body and of the tools or surfaces it is working with. A constant rhythm pattern is an optimal way to time these motions, and human beings seem to get moderate pleasure from being able to stick to it. Humans often refer to this colloquially as getting into a groove or feeling the flow. Music and dance also seem to be a concentrated dose of that stimulus to pleasure. Muscle control also embraces sequences of tension and release. With urgency, enthusiasm, or lassitude, and erect or slumping body postures that reflect confidence. Simultaneous contraction of 15 facial muscles along with certain noises, which are often irrepressible. This involuntary noise-making is commonly known as laughter. What is the human survival value of laughter? On the one hand, it is a reflex, but unique in that it serves no apparent biological purpose. One might call it a luxury reflex. Its only utilitarian function is to provide temporary relief from utilitarian pressures. On the evolutionary level, where laughter arises, an element of frivolity seems to creep into a humorless universe governed by the laws of thermodynamics and the survival of the fittest. Then a complicated mental activity like watching another human being performing a stand-up show should cause a specific motor response on the reflex level is a lopsided phenomenon. It is something which has puzzled human philosophers since antiquity.
Three security guards go into a pub. Nothing happens. And that's what we get paid for. Knock, knock. Just checking. What do you get if you cross a security guard? Trouble! Do it. It's quite a good life as a security guard. Social life is good, we have our own club. It's called the Security Guard Club. Sounding name. Club Security Guard. Some people took that a bit too literally. There's a lot of dangerous things in the world. Wind, for example. I've made a list. Matches, golf balls moving at high speed, doors marked WC that just have a huge drop on the other side, cars driven by idiots, cars driven by very sensible people swerving to avoid cars driven by idiots, cars driven by policemen chasing cars driven by idiots. Policemen generally, they're dangerous. It's universally agreed by all policemen that the police have an impossible job to do. Nevertheless, they insist on attempting to do it. That leads to frustration. Microwave those that sing to you, come put your head inside and turn me on. Check for those runners. Scissors which move of their own accord. I knocked this woman over. She said, why don't you look where you're going? I said, I was. Mother. I'd like to say a couple of words about menstruation. It's disgusting. Stop it!
Laughter is contagious. Humans tend to laugh up to 30 times more when they are with other humans than when they are alone. Even when humans laugh alone, they are often imagining they are with others. They are reading each other's words, hearing each other on the radio, or watching each other on television. Humans laugh when they hear laughter. All this suggests two things. First, laughter is noisy, not because it releases pent-up psychic energy, but so that other human beings may hear it. It is a form of communication. Second, laughter is involuntary for the same reason that other emotional displays are involuntary. As with displays of anger, sympathy, shame, and fear, the human brain is going to some effort to convince an audience that an internal state is heartfelt rather than a sham. Humor is also seen as a form of aggression. Humans view being laughed at as aversive and feels like an attack. Comedy often seems to run on slapstick refined settings. Humor can be overtly sadistic. Humans often laugh hysterically when other humans hurt themselves or suffer misfortune. The function of humor hinges dominance weapon. A human challenger calls attention to one of the many less than exalted qualities that any mortal, no matter how high and mighty, is saddled with. Sex and excretion are reminders that any human's claim to round-the-clock dignity is tenuous. Second, dominance is often enforceable one-on-one, but impotence before a united mob. This is where the subversive power of collective humor comes into play. To undermine the pretensions of certain groups of humans, teachers, preachers, kings, politicians, essentially any other human members of the high and mighty. Third, the human mind reflexively interprets other human beings' words and gestures by doing whatever it takes to make them sensible and true. The higher forms of wit are cases where a human audience's cognitive processes have been commandeered against them to deduce a disparaging proposition from premises they cannot deny. Humor is therefore a prized tactic of rhetoric and intellectual human argument. The perfect wit can give a human speaker an instant victory, deserved or not, and leave opponents stammering. However, not all humor is malicious. An evening spent laughing with friends appears to be one of life's greatest pleasures. Of course, much of the pleasure comes from disparaging humans outside the circle, which reinforces the friendship by the principle that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But much of it is mild self-deprecation and gentle teasing that everyone seems to enjoy. The recurring giggles that envelop good human friends are reavowals that the basis of the relationship is still friendship, despite the constant temptations for one party to have the upper hand. The very uselessness of art that seems to make it so incomprehensible to evolutionary biology makes it all too comprehensible to economics and social psychology. Evidence of this is shown in humans that measure affluence and success as accumulating money, instead wealth on objects and stunts that do not feed family physical security, but on the other hand, require precious materials, years of practice, a command of obscure texts, or intimacy. So-called modern and works are, therefore, intended not to give pleasure, but to confirm or confound the theories. In the main, the steadfast patrons of the arts are the aristocracy and those who want to join them. Human beings seem to find dignity in the signs of an honorably feudal existence removed from all menial necessities. All human beings value art, literature, and music. Their centrality in human life, and the pleasure that they bring appears to be beyond question. It seems to be part of being human that their ambitions and lives are framed according to their ideals, not just things that they want, but things that it would be right for them to want, and that would fulfill them were they to obtain them. The ideal is not attainable, but humans imagine what it would be like to attain it, when they see it fully realized in an imaginative work of art. This seems to apply even when the realization involves the destruction of another human character, as in tragedy. Tragedy vindicates the ideal by showing other humans how to be greater, more interesting, more worthy of praise than the forces that destroy them. When human beings contemplate tragedy, their lives can be illuminated in a work of art. What seems crucial is that humans must learn to recognize that their appreciation and understanding of works of art is in the first instance isolated from life. Works of art are not there to influence or guide human actions. The aesthetic experience enables humans to contemplate life from a position of sullen detachment. And this seems to feed their moral sense. A great artist or writer succeeds in showing just how concrete the vision of the world is, and how he is interrogating objects and using them to interrogate himself. Each detail is raising an evaluative question, not only about the thing itself, but also about the quality of the emotion directed towards it. Sentimentalism promotes an easy flow of emotion, so that you hardly see them. There is no self-interrogation, and no interrogation of the object. The level of awareness is diminished. Humans seem to use artistic to clarify their feelings about other things, not only to themselves, but to each other. The aesthetic judgment is never just "I like that, you don't." There is always an attempt to use the aesthetic object to cast light on a human's own way of life. Society, art is conceived as an autonomous activity that seems to be invested with an unprecedented stature, the nearest thing to a sacramental human activity acknowledged by secular society. Being a freelance explorer of spiritual dangers, the artist gains a certain license to behave differently from other humans. And so her job is inventing trophies of his experience, objects and gestures, or entertain their fellow human beings. The fabrication of these trophies or artifacts are also subject to artists finding new methods to avoid the hackneyed, to challenge jaded tastes, to differentiate the cognoscenti from the dilettante. Learn wisdom about what art is. These perplexing motivations are the exact reasons why humans constantly fail to define art in any precise way.
So that virtual port shop, that's what they're using. Yeah. And then you put a real port shop there. Yeah. That's going to start rotting. Yeah. And then you're going to get real flies coming in and eating that, and the virtual ones eating it as well. Right. And those virtual flies are flying around a virtual space that is exactly the same size as this room. So when they leave there, they are going over there. When they get to that wall, they will come back. Those virtual flies are programmed to look for the pork, and once they've been on the pork and they've eaten like 100's worth, they'll then fly off. When they burn that 100 off, they'll come back to eat some more pork. And then the meat itself is designed on the same cycles as rotting meat. So after 24 hours of a real bit of meat being rotten, the first flies to turn up are blowflies. After 48 hours, then the cheese flies turn up. After 3 days. So when that first program starts, time it is. So the first flies that come up are just like 3 or 4 blue bottles, and then after a day of being on, other flies will come, and as it rots more, depending on what day it is, different animals will come and feed on it. So the projector will be on there like that, hanging downwards, and just projecting it on there with a pork chop. And then And inside the port chop is that microphone in the bone, and there's also a light sensor in it. And you blow at the port chop, they'll all fly away. Okay. If you put your hand under to try and touch one, they'll all fly away. Right. So they will react the same as real flies. Yeah. You know, if you blew a real fly, it would fly away. If you try to touch it, it would fly away. Mine's going to do the same thing. And what I'm hoping is when they're projected, if a real fly lands next to one of my virtual flies, I'm just hoping that it'll recognise it in some way and maybe try to interact with it, and then you'll get perfect synthesis between the virtual and the real.